Okay, it wants me to click OK. Well, it's great to be here. I can't see any of you, but that's, I guess we'll have to do that way. Um, and I just wanted to let you know that I will be speeding a little bit through to get everything in. So there will be some slides that I skip, but they will be there in the archive, so not to worry. Um, I want to make sure we have time for a little drumming. So I first want to give thanks and praise to the ancestors, our Egun, those on whose shoulders we stand and whose lineages we are carrying forward. And of course, like everyone here, I'm missing Christy and adding my blessings to those we already spoke, both before the symposium and here, for her soul's peace and elevation. So in this group, we talk about, speak to, write about, create art and altars for the goddess and for a variety of her manifestations. We learn about and pray to and dance with goddesses from many cultures and across millennia. Being able to hold them all, which she no doubt wants us to do, is one of the most beautiful teachings the Mount Shasta Goddess Temple is devoted to. And for that and your creation, Yesha, of Goddess Without Borders, I thank you. I also thank everyone who's here, who's already presented and about to present, because I so appreciate the knowledge, experience, and wisdom that you all bring. And I'm really sorry I had to miss this morning, but I will catch up with the recordings. So one of the invocations I wanted to say is, Shekhinah is she who dwells within, the force that binds and patterns creation. She is mistress of the seas, tree of life, her own law and mystery, the beginning of wisdom. From Rabbi Lynn Gottlieb, who's also a priestess, has initiated years ago the Jewish-Muslim Peace Walk and is an artist. I'm not going to read this whole thing because you'll be able to see it later. It's also up on Ritual Well, the whole thing. This is just an excerpt, but because of Yesha's idea to have three be the theme, the Triskelion, and the three magical number this year, I realized that in '99, when I wrote my first piece of liturgy, I already was talking about almost the same three that I'll be talking about today. A little bit, actually, all of them, plus Asherah. Lilith is the first woman before Eve, as most of you know, made at the same time, and so I'll start with her and how I came to find her. Asherah is a tree of life and also Lady of the Sea. Shekhinah is she who dwells within each of us, that divine spark. So Lilith, this is a familiar image, I'm sure, to most of you. My familiarity with her and most of my research has focused in this area, Mesopotamia, and that figure you just saw, who lives in the British Museum, was found in Nippur. So my research began in '85, and then I went away from it for some unexplainable to myself reason, and again started in '97 when I came out to California and left corporate life. She of 10,000 names, well, yes, we say that about the deity many times. For many people, this is Inanna Ishtar. This is Inanna. For me, she will always be Lilith because that's how I was introduced to her before scholars in the '90s decided that she was someone other than that. However, my research committee for my thesis, I was very, very lucky to have Betty DeShong Metter on that committee, my thesis committee, and a blessed memory. We lost her a couple of years ago. But for her, and on her book, Inanna, Queen of Lady of Largest Heart, you will see this figure among others. So I definitely have a lot of friends and colleagues for whom this is Inanna or Inanna-Ishtar. And so that kind of troubled me, and I was wondering about it as I was doing my thesis. And so I went to Betty one day and said, because I was really dealing with the idea of Lilith only as a demon or trying to defend her position or her what's always perceived as just this shadow side, so to speak. And I said, could it be that she's an aspect of Inanna Ishtar? And she thought that was quite reasonable, and that really helped me change my thinking. So she's the first woman. She's Adam's first wife, made from the same bloody clay, as Cozy Fabian of blessed memory termed it, and made from the same primordial soup, as you see from this wonderful image by Lillian Broca. She's also called the first feminist, first divorcee, and other things. I wanted to also really acknowledge Cozy because I learned so much from her about Lilith. She died in 21. I want to invite you to close your eyes or lower your gaze as I read her liturgy for Lilith, because the writing is small and I think it has maybe a greater impact as well. I am Lilith, grandmother of Mary Magdalene. I am Lilith, whose sexual fire was too hot for God. I am Lilith, the first woman who chose the rage of exile over the cancer of servitude. I am Lilith, mother to the motherless. I am Lilith, whose blood covers the moon. I am Lilith, standing on owl's claws at a woman's crossroads. I am Lilith, the whore in the gateway of the temple. I am Lilith, whose serpentine tongue caused Eve to laugh and to pick the apple. I am Lilith, revolving sword of flame, scorching hypocrisy from truth's white bones. I am Lilith, free-moving in the wilderness. I am Lilith, spirit of night and air. I am Lilith, in whose dark caves transgressors find sanctuary. I am Salome. I am Morgan Le Fay. I am the Queen of Sheba. My hair is black, and I am, quote, dark but comely, quote. Solomon sang my song. My hair is red, and my skin ivory. I am Eve's big sister. I am Lilith, mother to the motherless. I am Lilith, whose sexual fire was too hot for God. I am Lilith, living in the shadow, waiting for you. And this was especially profound, I suppose, and authentic, because Cozy, for a number of years, was a sacred prostitute. She was also a mythologist and also an activist. So freedom has always been very important to me. I've long been a nomad, but because of my own expectations and those of society, I married in 1975, ostensibly to put down some roots. That proved to be a mistake. The relationship destabilized me and took me away, far away from my true self. What I didn't realize in those younger years was that part of my authentic self was nomadic, and when I couldn't be that within the confines of marriage, I often found myself angry without necessarily always knowing why. I was unable to express myself freely without censure, derision, or being shamed or silenced. So it's not a wonder that Lilith screamed out to me when I first learned about her, which was in 1985, when I was drawn to enroll in a Back to the Sources class. Learning there was such a fiery, self-authorized figure in Jewish literature was eye-opening, intoxicating, a more than welcome interruption to my then corporate married existence. And I have more to say about that. It also was on a recent, one of my earlier Substacks, but I will also include that here for you to see later. So she was the first woman in Hebrew and other cultures' mythologies, someone who protests male domination, resisted a situation which suffocated her. So she has become, since feminist literature really became well known in the 70s with Lilith magazine and the writings of Judith Plaskow and others, she's a symbol of resistance who's inspired women to find their voice, to stand up for themselves and others, because she is seen like Kali as having rage, but it's a rightful rage on behalf of herself or those who have no voice. She chooses sexual freedom and capacity and choice. She's willing to take risks. And I will tell you her story, but I just do want to add that, as you know, she's been demonized and adored and very sexualized in pop culture and science fiction. The very short version of her story, which also is up on my website in longer fashion, is that she did not like living with Adam. It was not paradise. It was a prison for her. He insisted that she have sex in the missionary position only, and we can assume that he was telling her what to do in every other aspect of her life. So finally she'd had enough. She said, that's it, I'm done. Flew out of Eden for the Reed or Red Sea to cavort, they write, with demons, and Cozy used to say, presumably in any position she wished. And so Adam was lonely, he complained to God, bitched bitterly, and so God sent 3 angels to go after her, to bring her back. She refused, although they threatened her with either being infertile, or having 100 children die a night, or having 100 demon children each night. And so the deal she struck with them is, if you have my name on the crib of the baby, or the room where the pregnant mother is, or on the clothing, or wherever they might put an amulet, if you put my name, I will leave that baby alone. I was sent here to make children sick, not, as many legends have it, to kill them. That was the purview of the male Lilu demons, according to Joanne Scurlock at University of Chicago. And I think that's very well said, although it isn't often said. but we do know that it is the job of some deities to bring illness. What I've learned about Kali, and certainly this holds true for many deities, is that she gives smallpox, she can take it away, and she is the smallpox, which I find a fascinating concept. But again, it's not unique, I'm sure, to Kali. And so that was her job, to bring illness. Anyhow, she was later feared as a demon, but in the beginning, 3rd millennium or earlier, BCE, she was a goddess. She was invoked for protection. This is something that Eleanor Gaydon of blessed memory writes about, and that Vicky Noble also writes about. She was a protector. It was more as patriarchy came in that she was starting to be demonized. And by the 13th century, Kabbalistic writers were not saying that she was created from the same earth as Adam, but that she was created out of filth and sediment. That's how deep this fear and this hatred of her and everything she stands for runs. Vicky Noble and Lucia Birnbaum, also of blessed memory, Lucia, see her domination by Adam as possibly the first rape. So I've kind of said all that already. I want to say that she inspired my thesis, which became this book, Lilith's Fire. Of course, the snake who I photographed for the cover was named Lilith. And I had 2 at that time, Lilith and Eve. And the creation of my website in '97 was certainly inspired by her. And she continues to inspire and manifest in ways like Tending Lilith's Fire, broadcast and podcast that I co-created with Annie Matan, another Kohenet, a priestess, and more recently, my Living Lilith Substack. The first time I met Cozy was at a Z Budapest Women's Spirituality Festival. And she got up to talk about Lilith, and her first words were, "I live Lilith." And so this is kind of a tribute to her also, but I remember that it just sent a shock through my body hearing that. And again, as hearing about her in the text for the first time had a profound effect. I just wanted to share a couple of sentences from the mission that we had for the Tending Lilith's Fire broadcast. In Lilith's name, we reclaim women's power, sovereignty, lifeblood, rage, voice, vulnerability, eroticism, strength, healing, craft, consciousness, place, space, wisdom, knowing, intuition, inspiration, vision, joy, pleasure, leadership, sexuality, body, lineage, priestesshood, magic, and more. I always love revisiting that, even though we stopped doing that series a couple of years ago. So she's also manifested in ways like a Lilith speaker series I created a few years ago, Lilith Fire Circles, and a book circle that was based on Original Resistance, Reclaiming Lilith, Reclaiming Ourselves, the anthology, and the workbook that accompanied it, written by our own Monette Chilson, author of My Name is Lilith, which is ostensibly a children's book, but has been very much enjoyed and revisited by adults. So switching over to Asherah. This print on the left, she is a tree of life, all her paths are peace, was also a very profound turning point for me when I was studying women's spirituality as a grad student. Up to that point in my life, I had only heard of this expression out of Proverbs as it is a tree of life, and it was referring either to Judaism or the Torah, the sacred text. So I didn't have very much connection to it. But when I read she, and I had been just now learning about the goddess for at least about a year at that point, it really, really struck me. And so that theme, as you see from the title of today's presentation, has really taken hold in my life. It was also part of my dissertation title. Like Lakshmi, she's related to both trees and the ocean. And that's one of the more famous figurines, I think, that we're looking at. I also want to thank Edith Aharon for giving us permission to have this another version of a tree of life, which I love, on my website. She's based in the Galilean Tzfat. Another pillar figurine found at Lashish, 25 miles southwest of Jerusalem, which lives in the British Museum. One of my problems, all our problems, I'm sure, is knowing how to parse what we see in a museum and seeing some of the ridiculous appellations they give to these figures, right? Sometimes minimizing their importance as just a fertility doll or a toy even. Amihai Mazar, also of blessed memory, the director of the excavations, who did a lot of good and important work, believes the figurine could represent Asherah, a Canaanite goddess, which she was, but also very much worshipped by Hebrews, later Jews, or Astarte, another fertility goddess. So it seemed diminutive to me, that making her, as if she was only that. One more example, well, the same that you just saw. A rectangular incense altar designed as a city gate with a tree incised, if you can see right here, thought to represent Asherah. And she's accompanied by two, what they are calling minor fertility goddesses from the 10th century BCE. And another altar with her represented here. There's a little tree right there. And other important symbols. It's interesting because this reed design is very much a symbol of Inanna. But anyway, she is known, as I said, that she could be known as Lady Asherah of the Sea, but also she who walks on the sea. She's mentioned 40 times in the Hebrew Bible, and her symbols in synagogues were there for about 200 years in places of worship, till King Josiah came along and reviled everything she stood for, and no doubt was threatened by how many people were praying to her and honoring and worshiping her in various ways. So I'll tell you more about that in a minute. Egyptian representations of Kudshu, potentially the Egyptian name for Asherah, show her naked with snakes and flowers, sometimes standing on a lion, which you'll see right here. I think it may be blocked by my name, so I hope not, but if it is, you'll see it in the recording. And I came across this amazing gown. Asherah, one of her symbols is also, or that she is synonymous with, the menorah. And so that's been an important symbol in my own research and taken me to a sarcophagus and all kinds of other research, which is a whole other presentation. But Tree of Life, the menorah, you can see why that might be.
I just want to ask a quick pause while I take care of a technical thing here. Just 1 second.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know how to get rid of that box that says that I'm talking.
No, we don't see that. No worries.
Oh, good.
I'm just going to take care of this other technical.
That's fine. No problem. Oh, I've got to stop my timer.
Okay, we are going to be ready in just 1 second. We had a little projector malfunction, but we're back. Okay, there we go. Coming up. Okay, great. Please continue.
Okay, thank you. Let me start this again. So meanwhile, but earlier, 5,000 or 6,000 years ago in Malta, we have this, which I just had to include because we have a tree right there and an owl, one of Lilith's, of course, favorite symbols. Asherah has been portrayed by various artists, consciously by this man, David Hostetler, who's in the U.S., which I found fascinating when I discovered his work, and not named Asherah, but made out of, I think, mahogany wood, and certainly a tree of life, the creator woman made by Meshach Rapalalani in South Africa. She's holding her hand out to people as a place of shelter, and her womb open as a place of shelter during apartheid. That was his explanation to me. Yeah. So the first mention of the Asherah pole is found in Exodus, and then later we find instructions to not plant and rather to destroy Asherah poles or groves in Deuteronomy. And there are other references too. But King Josiah, who's written about in Kings 2 and elsewhere, has such vitriol, such a hatred of her, such a fear of her, that any symbol of her, whether it's a pole, whether it's a batim, which we're not sure what they are, but they were woven, maybe either a little like a spirit house, or it could have been something that would hang on the wall. All were instructed to be destroyed, taken out of the synagogues or places of worship, and ground to dust if it was a pole. And there was so much vitriol that he also instructed that some of those what was strewn, what was ground up, be taken to the hillside where there were known to be altars and folks were worshiping there. Much of the populace who probably were doing that over, doing more organized religion, and to strew those remains, let's say, over graves. You have to really hate something to want to do that. Yeah. But then I recently, about a year ago, saw this amazing image of her looking like a Sheila Nagig. And so if those were popular 13th century, then, and if the king saw that, certainly that could be another clue as to why taking her out was such an important task to them. But we reclaim her as part of our teaching in our class on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, which I do with Reb Nadja Gross. And I just wanted to include that beautiful image on the left, for she is a tree of life. She comes to me in so many different ways, and this is another of them. This is, as many of you are probably familiar with, the diagram of the Kabbalistic tree. And without any manipulation or photoshopping, I took that photo in near Estes Park, Colorado, some years ago. And this is what happened. This is the picture I got, which for me was like half or more of the Tree of Life with the Sefirot, the energy essences, which is what these circles are called, the divine and human attributes. My own Asherah or Lakshmi, a couple of them. I have more, but these are two that are in our garden. And this is from the old redwood up north. Moving on to Shekhinah in the next 4 or 5 minutes. If I had 3 hours, she would be impossible to define. She is really ineffable, and I feel her differently. And I will try to describe her, but it really is impossible. And many people would say that about God or goddess from any culture, any religion. And God is often, when we try to make God or think of her as corporeal, we are often told, well, but it's spirit. There's no, God is just spirit. And that is also true. And many people I know feel that way. But when it's used as a defense against the way female deity has been ignored or treated, then my answer in one case to one man in particular years ago was, well, if that's the case, then why do we still sing things like Our Father, Our King? If there's no gender involved, if God is genderless, then explain this to me. Anyway, as I try to define her a little bit, she, like all our deities, live in our body. We hold her and she holds us. I feel that more strongly with her very often. I imagine her wings as protective. And she is the deity that I greet every Friday afternoon as we go into the Sabbath. I never did that 20 years ago, but I do now because she is the Sabbath queen. We are the Mishkan, the place of dwelling in the desert. We, in our bodies, are this sacred container that she represents. She's called the presence, the glory, a cloud. She manifests clearly in the Talmud and later texts, which is like 200 to 500 CE, the Talmud, but really not in the Torah, or certainly not as female. The word Mishkan is what Shekhinah comes from, and that itself is feminine in Hebrew. Dwelling, shelter, sanctuary. This is one image I love. It might be one image of the Mishkan in the desert, but I think it's a little too fancy for that with the columns and the archangel artwork. But anyway, it's an image, source unknown, of her entering the temple as a cloud. Divinity is not personified in visual imagery. And of course, there is like a command, let's say, or a taboo against that, as there is in Islam. But because our human minds often need something physical to wrap around when we're trying to connect with her, we often turn to statues, images, and symbols, because otherwise it's really hard to conceive, right? I love a couple of these I'll just share from the Talmud, which is when what the rabbis were doing, interpreting the Torah. When two people study Torah, it's as if the Shekhinah is between them. That's been a very powerful line for me to hear. And I was once at a Jewish museum down at Lower Manhattan and saw a huge wall media digital display, and it did not say the Shekhinah. It said it's as if God is between them. And so, of course, there's a huge difference in the mind of the beholder, right? Those who recite the blessing over the new moon in its time is as if they greeted the presence of the Shekhinah. Hold on, I'm just resetting my timer a little bit here. Okay. Her many names and guises are a sanctuary, moon, the ark, light, the Torah itself, canopy of peace, bride, queen, candle, altar. The Sabbath table is considered an altar, a cosmic spring, loving mother, the female Sabbath, or the extra Sabbath soul, which is its own presentation. Different ways we might envision her. That veiled image and this middle one comes from Leonard Nimoy's study and a coffee table book he created from his photographs called Shekhinah, which of course was very controversial, not only because she was half nude, but because of this called tefillin. It's something you wrap around. It only used to be done by men and has been done by women at least since the 90s now. And it has a little box that you see near her hand that go on your upper arm, and the other one goes right on your, really over your third eye or a bit higher. Anyway, just some, if we try to imagine her, this might be a few of the ways that one could. So I'm going to drum for a few minutes and ask you to think about, what does it mean to say that she's in us and we're in her? What is she or her for you? If any of the qualities of the three deities I discussed today resonate, then is there one that you especially relate to, or all of them, or another one who has been presented at the symposium? And I will start now. As we tune into the heartbeat of the mother, however we envision her. I'm hearing some static.
All right, thank you.
In closing, I want to read Judy Grann's poem. They say she is veiled and a mystery. That is one way of looking. Another is that she is where she always has been, exactly in place. And it is we who are mystified, we who are veiled and without faces.
That was amazing, Devora. Thank you so much. I'm
Thank
actually
you.
gonna bring you on the spotlight here because I wanted to just say something while we have you here. Something
Yeah.
that really struck me about Devora's presentation that's different than the others so far, and aren't we the richer for it, is did you hear her say, in the 1970s and the 80s and the 90s I did this, in the 80s I did this, in the 70s I was doing this, and then so and so, my teacher, she of blessed memory, she of blessed memory, she of blessed memory. Devora has known so many foremothers who came before us, and I'm so moved by your body of work. But I want to say something about this that just feels really important for this time. A lot of times we hear in goddess community women saying things like, women are awakening. No, only young women. The only people who think they're awakening are the ones to whom it's new. It's not new to the rest of us who were here for 40, 50, 60 years, who were here since we found a verboten book in the back of a bookstore at the age of 12. Those of us who were here doing it the whole time, it's not new. And there's nobody awakening who, for
Right.
whom it's, unless it's new to them. And I think that's so important because for every person who is out there with their 100,000 Instagram followers, aflush with their awakening, telling us videos of things we already have heard a
Yeah.
thousand times, but it's new to them. There's a Devora who's studied with dozens of women who are already gone, who never had their work expressed to that many people, who never had that kind of reach before the internet existed. And I want to just give thanks to you, Devora, for your body of work, for the
Thank you.
lineage you carry, for the memory you carry, and for all the women whose names you mentioned today. Beautiful,
Thank,
beloved women.
thank you.
You.
I just want to bring in then Monica Shu and Asphodel Long.
And
And of course,
Asphodel.
Carol Christ and Mara Keller. Okay. I know. I mean, and it's very sad, as I was preparing this and realizing how many are gone. Of course, it's very sad too. But
But they
but
live on with
thank
you.
you
When you say their names, they
with,
live.
with all of us.
You. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.